Later. First, your main news. Well, the Supreme Court of Appeal wants President Jacob Zuma's lawyers to argue in an open court for leave to appeal the so-called spytapes ruling. This follows the Constitutional Court's announcement last week that it would not hear the NPA's appeal on the saga. Earlier this year, the High Court in Pretoria set aside the NPA's decision to drop fraud and corruption charges against the president, saying the move was irrational. The 783 corruption charges had been dropped in 2009. But let's get more now on this. I'm joined in studio by our reporter Aldrin Sampear, who's been following the case for us. Aldrin, welcome. Thanks for coming in. So let's just start with what exactly this order means. For example, what does it mean for the charges?
Well, as it stands, because the appeal is still there, it means that the charges cannot be reinstated. So the NPA can't reinstate the charges. Remember that the High Court has ruled that the charges should be reinstated, or President Jacob Zuma rather should face the 783 charges. But considering that there's this appeal, of course, by President Jacob Zuma, now that we know for certain that it will be heard, this then means that the charges can't be reinstated. So the NPA on the other side will have to hold back on that decision. What does it mean in terms of President Jacob Zuma's lawyers? So basically what will happen this time around is, unlike in many other cases, normal procedure where you apply for leave to appeal and then only argue in open court the merits of the case, this time around the lawyers of President Jacob Zuma are being asked to apply for leave to appeal. So this means that they'll be arguing why they should be granted leave to appeal, but also be arguing on the basis of the merits of the case. And we've seen this happen before. Remember during the Al-Bashir case as well at the Supreme Court of Appeal, the applicants in that matter, government in the state in that matter, also applied for leave to appeal in an open court, but also argued the merits of the case. So not really a new precedent as some has been arguing.
For the NPA, what's their next step?
For the NPA, this is quite interesting because remember that the Constitutional Court has said that it will not hear the matter as yet. Or not not now, and some legal minds have been saying that that was basically because of the president's appeal at the Supreme Court of Appeal, that the Constitutional Court felt that it won't be prudent to hear that matter at this moment. But what does it mean for the NPA? What this moment means is that considering that this matter will only be heard sometime in 2017, next year rather, it grants a loophole for the NPA to come and join this case as an applicant as well, considering that they are also arguing on issues around the separation of power. And these are some of the facts that are being stated in President Jacob Zuma's case as well. When I spoke to the NPA head, Sean Abrams, last week, he indicated that the decision will be made by next week. So we'll have to wait and see what exactly that decision is, whether they will sit back and wait for the president to go all the way with this case and only join the Constitutional Court case, when the DA has also argued that they're willing to go all the way to the Constitutional Court, and whether the NPA will then only join back then when the DA, or whether President Jacob Zuma even for that matter, decides to go to the Constitutional Court.
But in all likelihood they could join.
Definitely.
All right, so politically it seems that the ANC has been thrown into a bit of turmoil again. President Jacob Zuma now back where he was 10 years ago.
Definitely. Remember that this case dates back to 2007. It was back in 2007, just before the Polokwane conference, that Bulelani Ngcuka and Leonard McCarthy had this conversation around when to serve the indictment on President Jacob Zuma. And 10 years later, where are we? Exactly at the same point, where the NPA would probably have will probably have to make the final decision on whether to prosecute President Jacob Zuma. And quite interesting, what does this mean? I guess this is a question that we should throw out there. What does this mean for those within the party, those within the ANC who are pushing for President Jacob Zuma to go for a third term? The president has already indicated that he doesn't want to go for a third term, but what we also know is that even back in Polokwane, he said that he doesn't want to go for a second term, and that happened. So we'll have to wait and see how the party members, the ANC members, and those who want President Jacob Zuma to go for a third term, how they interpret this case and his chances of being victorious when the ANC goes to his elective conference in December next year.
Very interesting. We will watch and wait to see exactly what happens with all this. Aldrin, thank you very much. Aldrin Sampear, our political reporter, who's been following that case.